You went motor racing, Max. That's pole position. Great job.
Yes!
What a lap. What a lap. 24.8, mate. Pole position, British Grand Prix. Well done.
That is simply lovely.
Did you know that Max Verstappen took pole at Silverstone after being lost with an uncontrollable car? What looked like another disastrous weekend for Red Bull ended with an unexpected twist. Comment now. Do you think this pole position saves Verstappen's season, or is it just a mirage? What changed overnight to make the RB21 fly in qualifying? In this video, we analyze how Max Verstappen transformed a chaotic Friday into one of the most impressive pole positions of the year at Silverstone. Max Verstappen arrived at Silverstone under enormous pressure. Red Bull wasn't dominating like in previous seasons, and the car seemed to have lost its mojo. The team sat fourth in the Constructors' Championship with just 162 points, far behind McLaren, which led with 417. The gap was so stark that even some in the paddock began to question whether Red Bull was no longer a serious contender for the 2025 title. Friday's practice session was a disaster for Verstappen. The car was a constant problem on track. It suffered from extreme understeer, meaning the front end didn't respond as it should in corners. According to Max himself, he felt the RB21 understeered to the moon. Red Bull knew this. Helmut Marko was honest in saying that the car's balance varied from corner to corner. It was unstable, unpredictable, and slow. That day, the possibility of fighting for pole position simply seemed non-existent. What made the situation even more alarming was that it wasn't the first time this season that Red Bull had been exposed on difficult Fridays. But this time was different. Silverstone is a demanding, technical, and fast track. If you're not in shape from day one, miracles usually don't happen. McLaren and Ferrari seemed comfortable from the opening lap, while Verstappen showed clear signs of frustration with every outing. Despite being a four-time world champion, his radios reflected confusion. The car simply wasn't doing what he wanted. During that Friday, cameras captured engineers checking the car's floor, consulting telemetry, and Verstappen meeting for over an hour in the hospitality area with his race engineer, Gianpiero Lambiase. These weren't typical meetings. They were crises. Everyone's body language was tense. The question hung in the air: could Red Bull turn around a weekend that seemed already lost? As night fell, everything indicated that Saturday would be a simple opportunity to minimize damage. No one, not even the most optimistic in the garage, was betting on pole position. Verstappen himself didn't hide his skepticism, declaring that the car didn't feel connected and that the balance was too variable to attempt anything serious. That was the situation before qualifying. A storm of technical issues, internal pressure, and doubts about the future. To understand the miracle that occurred at Silverstone, it's key to analyze how Red Bull reacted to the crisis and, above all, how Max Verstappen acted. Because one thing was clear: this wasn't just a technical improvement. It was a joint effort, an almost desperate decision to change everything in a single night. After Friday, the atmosphere in the Red Bull garage was one of real concern. No one said it openly in front of the cameras, but the images showed it clearly. Serious gestures, long meetings, engineers reviewing every piece of data, comparing telemetry, and seeking urgent answers. What was at stake wasn't simply a good qualifying. It was the team's technical credibility and, ultimately, the loyalty of its star driver. The first step was to acknowledge the problem. And they did so quickly. Helmut Marko publicly admitted that the car was suffering from massive understeer. He defined it as an imbalance that varied from corner to corner. That honesty, although unusual, was the starting point for a complete transformation. The team understood that if they didn't do something radical, Saturday would not only be disappointing, but possibly humiliating. The technical response was risky. It was decided to adopt a low downforce setup, something usually reserved for circuits with long straights and few fast corners. Silverstone, however, is the opposite. Fast, flowing, and extremely demanding in sections like Maggots, Beckett's, and Chapel. Applying less downforce on that type of track was a move that could backfire horribly or turn out to be brilliant. But Red Bull didn't just change the aerodynamic approach. They also implemented an updated floor. It was the second part of an evolution that had begun in Austria. This modification wasn't visually dramatic, but it had a key impact. Adjustments to the central area of the Venturi channels and the front flow diverters. These were changes focused on microaerodynamics, small tweaks with a large cumulative effect. The result was a car that was no longer uncontrollable at the front and began to respond. Not perfectly, but enough for Verstappen to push. The balance improved. High corner stability became predictable. And above all, the RB21 gained speed on the straights. This combination allowed Max to take advantage of his aggressive driving style, taking risks where others failed. This is where the human side of the story comes in. Because the engineers could do their part, but it was Verstappen who had to execute. And he did so with a composure worthy of the best moments of his career. He knew he had a car at its limit, with low downforce, prone to sliding in fast corners and vulnerable to crosswinds. But he also knew it was his only chance. During Q3, Verstappen's commitment was absolute. His final lap wasn't visually clear. The car moved, slid, and reacted abruptly. But he didn't let up. He kept his foot on the accelerator in areas where other drivers were more conservative. That ability to trust an unstable machine, to find the limit without going overboard, is what makes the difference between a good driver and a legend. After crossing the finish line, the reaction was immediate. His engineer informed him, "Max, that's pole position. Great job." And what came next was one of the most iconic radio messages of the year. "Oh, yes. Oh my God, guys. Simply lovely." An expression that, although he had used it in the past, this time had a special meaning. It was the perfect conclusion to a night of extreme work and a day of redemption. And it wasn't just a personal victory. It was a clear message, a reminder that, even on their worst days, Red Bull and Verstappen can reinvent themselves. That under pressure, they can make bold decisions and emerge stronger. And that, no matter how much noise there is outside the garage, when the decisive moment arrives, they remain a force to be reckoned with. That Saturday at Silverstone wasn't simply an unexpected pole position. It was an act of sporting survival, a direct response to criticism, a demonstration that the bond between Verstappen and his team, although tested, remains functional, at least for now. Qualifying at Silverstone was an unexpected triumph, but Saturday guarantees nothing in Formula One. What happens in Sunday's race could completely transform the current narrative. And this is where we enter a realm of absolute uncertainty. Red Bull knows its technical gamble was risky. The low downforce setup that allowed Verstappen to soar in qualifying also comes at a price, and that price is paid in tire management. Over previous weekends, even when single-lap pace was competitive, Red Bull struggled on long runs. Excessive front axle wear has been a constant, especially on circuits that require a lot of support in fast corners, such as Silverstone. Verstappen himself admitted as much after securing pole position. He said tire life could be an issue and that he didn't yet know how the car would perform during the race. His exact quote was revealing. "Naturally, usually in race runs we struggle a bit more with tire life. And I don't know how that will be tomorrow." It's unusual for Max to express such direct doubts. And when he does, it's because there are truly variables beyond his control. Added to this is another key factor: the weather. Silverstone is known for its unpredictable weather. In previous years, rain has appeared unexpectedly, changing the course of entire races in a matter of minutes. And for this Sunday, the forecasts remain uncertain. Some weather models point to a moderate chance of rain during the second half of the race. Others predict strong wind gusts, something that could further compromise the RB21's performance with its low downforce. In Helmut Marko's words, Red Bull absolutely cannot use rain on Sunday. And that statement is no coincidence. With such little downforce, the car would be extremely difficult to handle in wet conditions. Traction would be further reduced, oversteer would be amplified, and the possibility of errors would increase. Strategy, in this context, would go from being an advantage to a heavy burden. But not everything is uncertain for Red Bull. There are concrete elements that fuel a certain hope. The improvements implemented on the car's floor, as Marko explained, worked even better than in Austria. The engineers report improved pressure distribution along the floor, which stabilizes aerodynamic flow and allows for more downforce to be extracted without compromising top speed. Although the adjustments were minimal in visual terms, their impact on the car's balance was enormous. And if that balance is maintained in the race, Verstappen could have a very powerful strategic window. The difference between pole and a podium could be defined by a single lap of poor degradation or a misread of the weather. But beyond the technical and strategic details, what's really at stake is the narrative that will be built from this race. If Verstappen manages to convert pole position into a resounding victory, he will have sent a devastating message. Even amid the chaos, he remains the most dominant driver on the grid. But if Red Bull collapses in race pace again, qualifying will be a mirage, and rumors about his future will gain renewed traction. What happens this Sunday will also directly impact the championship. Red Bull urgently needs points to stay in the fight, and Verstappen, despite already being a four-time champion, is fighting not only for victories, but also for control of his own destiny. How he closes out this first half of the season could determine whether he stays in Milton Keynes or ultimately gives in to the interest of other teams. What Max Verstappen achieved at Silverstone goes far beyond a simple pole position. It was a demonstration of character, technical intelligence, and, above all, quiet leadership. He started from total chaos, a Friday with a car that wasn't responding, with rumors surrounding his future, and with relentless media pressure. And yet, together with his team, he made a complete turnaround in less than 24 hours. That qualifying lap, under less than favorable conditions, was a work of extreme precision. A direct message, both to his critics and to his potential suitors. Verstappen remains the most decisive driver on the grid when it really matters. However, the most interesting thing is what lies ahead. Sunday's race will not only determine who wins at Silverstone, but also which narrative prevails in the paddock, that of a Red Bull resurgence or the beginning of a new cycle in the hands of McLaren, Ferrari, or even Mercedes. Every lap, every strategic decision, every technical detail can tip the balance. And Verstappen, as he's already shown, is prepared to respond to any scenario, but he won't wait forever for everything to fall into place around him. That's why I want you to be part of this analysis too. Leave your opinion in the comments. Is this pole position a sign that the competitive fire still burns within the team, or simply an isolated flash in an unstable season? Your point of view counts, because in Formula One, what seems certain today can change completely tomorrow. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.